Hi, Martin here. Today we're going to change out the front and rear shocks on a 99 through 04 Jeep Grand Cherokee. Now the front shock is very typical to all your Jeep Cherokee XJs, the ZJ, the WJ, and then also it's very typical to a lot of your Wranglers as well. The rear shocks vary a little bit different from the ZJs and XJs, so this is more typical just to the 99 through 04 Jeep Grand Cherokee for the rears. Alright, I'm going to these are a Gabriel Max Control shock, a mono tube, nitrogen filled. I like the nitrogen filled shocks, and there's probably nothing wrong with the shocks I have on here. I just want to go to this style of shock. Alright, well let's get started. Okay, we're going to start with the front. I'm using a hydraulic jack. I'm going to raise it by the frame because we want to get the body up, keep the tire mostly toward the ground. I will remove the front tire so you can get in here and work. It isn't totally necessarily on the front. You could turn this tire, get in there and work, but for video purposes it's definitely easier if we remove the front tire. Now, for safety's sake, chalk the back tire. You got your hydraulic jack here. I'm placing the jack on the transmission cross member there, and I've got a jack stand mounted on the frame. And then lower the jack to the jack stand. But I still got pressure on the jack itself. Alright, with the hood lifted up, and over here on the left side of the vehicle, right there's your front top of the shock. That's the post there. This is located right behind the ABS system. Alright, you'll see this piece of plastic right here if you have a four-wheel drive. What I find best to get that off of there, and what that is a vent tube for the front axle. I just like clamping a pair of vice grips on there. There, pull that off. The tube itself just popped off. Now we got that out of the way. Now, the nut can vary in sizes depending on the shock. This particular one is 9/16 of an inch. And another thing that can happen right now is I'm spinning this, the shaft itself on the shock could be spinning, and it's not loosening up. This one actually feels like it is. Now, if you're in the rust belt, it most likely will spin the shaft. And what you're going to need to do, one of a couple things. Now you could clamp a pair of vice grips onto this shaft. Now that of course is going to mark the shaft up and potentially ruin this shock. Now these shocks are still good. I just want to resell them, so obviously I'm not going to do that. You may be able to get a depending on the type of shock it is. It looks like there's a nut type where you could put a wrench. It'd have to be a very skinny wrench, or you clamp a pair of vice grips right to this collar right here, or channel locks. Now what they also do, right here on the top of the shock, you'll notice just like that there. This will also vary in size. This particular one is a 6mm, 1/4 inch also works for this, and you can hold it, the shaft with this, keep it from spinning, and then put a wrench on your nut right here to remove it. Alright. Pull the washer and the bushing off. Alright, this particular model, this is a 10 millimeter on top, 13 millimeter on the bottom. Now, if you're from the Rust Belt, I would suggest using some penetrating oil, PB Blaster, Safety Clean type brand. Okay. And prepare to buy new hardware. Now just grab a hold of the shock, pull it down, and then lift it on out. Alright, now your shock came with these boots right here. Personally, I am not a fan of these. The shock itself comes with holes here on the bottom of it, and that's like a vent. And what I don't like about it is water, dirt, mud, all can go down these holes and it can get trapped down here. Yes, the shock itself has these like little holes, or the shock boot I should say has these little holes here that's supposed to let that type of stuff out, but it doesn't work that way. I don't like them, and those Rancho shocks that I had on there had the boots on. I cut them off. I will put these on the Rancho shocks, and I'm going to sell them with these boots. Now, because what happens too is all that dirt and mud gets trapped on top of here, and it'll start pitting this shaft. And so they do more harm than good. Alright, well, now, on to the next step. Alright, now these shocks come with this wire on here. Because they are nitrogen filled, once you release this wire, the shock will extend to its full length. Now, personally, I like to go ahead and cut that wire like that. The shock is extending. Does it really slow. Comes with the new bushing hardware up here. Now you take one of the washers, place it on the shock like so. You'll notice this has a flat side to it. That side is going to go down. You want this part that protrudes to go into the body of the vehicle. Alright, now we're ready to put the shock back in. Alright, take the shock, put it up through the hole there. Now, you may have to lift the shock up. And it is somewhat hard. And then once you get it in place, you just let it down like so. You got the bolts that line up. At this point, go ahead and return the hardware to the lower part of the shock. And you may have had to buy new hardware because that can be rather rusty down here, depending on what part of the country you're from. Now, if you're so inclined, it does come with a sticker. I'm not a big sticker guy, but you can't see this anyway. Alright, now let's just reinstall the top part of it. Now, when reinstalling the bushing and washer, it's right here, make sure that the center post of the shock absorber is directly in the center. Use that socket like that, push that down. And when tightening down, you want to get a little bit better than a 50% squash on the grommets, on those rubber bushings. Do not tighten it all the way down to where you run out of threads. So it looks something like that. Now they also give you this little like locking nut. This is to keep the nut that you just placed on the top of the shock from backing off. Go ahead and install that as well. And then you're complete with this side. Now, all you got to do is repeat the exact same thing on the other side. And here I want to just show you where that is. Here's your PCM or your control module for your transmission. Your battery's right there. You look down here and that's it right there. Right, all we've got to do now is replace the tire, get everything torqued properly, lower the vehicle, and you can go ahead, do the exact same thing to the other side, and then we're going to move to the back. Okay, with the front end complete, start by putting a chalk at the front tire, especially when you're raising the back of the vehicle up. That's when you have the most potential of the vehicle rolling off, because that's your park gear with the rear tires. I've gone ahead and raised the vehicle using the frame and put a jack stand underneath as well. The rear tire removed, we can go ahead and start on the rear shocks. Alright, we'll start with the top bolt right here. It's a 5/8. Now this is the only one that might give you a problem, especially if you're from the rust belt. If rust got inside that frame area, that could definitely give you a problem. So if it does start getting tight, work it back and forth each way. You don't want to twist this bolt off. One thing nice about living in southern Nevada, these bolts came out like the day they went in from the factory. Alright, with the top bolt removed, move to the bottom one here. Go ahead and use some type of penetrating oil. I got Safety Clean here, penetrating lube. Give that a shot. Now this nut here is affixed to the bracket, so you don't necessarily have to stick a wrench on here. This one could be a potential problem as well as for twisting off if you're from the rust belt. Alright. Remove the shock. Now, same thing holds true as the front. I am not a fan of these boots, so I'll be removing that. Come on. You want to come off of there. It's putting up a fight. Now on this end, it wouldn't be a bad idea to leave this on here until you get one or the other end installed. And I'll show you how that works. And just make the installation a little bit easier. So what I'd do is start by putting the bottom bolt in first. Okay, and for right now we don't need to tighten this. Alright, line that up, and it almost lines up perfectly. Now what I'm going to do here is just adjust the height of my jack to see if I can get that to go right in there perfect. Like, here we go. And by doing that, I don't have to fight with the power of that nitrogen-filled shock to get it lined up perfectly. And now at this time, you can go ahead and tighten your hardware down, both ends. And you can go ahead and cut this off there on both ends and take that out of there. And go ahead and tighten the bottom one. Install the sticker. Of course, that's optional. Replace the tire, torque it properly, and all you got to do now is repeat what you just saw here on this side on the other side, and you're all done. Well, thanks for watching. Please subscribe and hit that little bell symbol right next to it. That way you get notifications of any new videos I got out. Thanks again.